right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna stroll down memory lane a little bit, but first we gotta get a coffee, because that's Coffee with Kyle.
Right.
Sorry, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. All right, the year you were born is really the year your dad got in racing. You're like me, you were just born into it. What's your first memories of your dad working on race cars, and when did you realize your dad worked on race cars?
Yeah, so when I was born here in Charlotte. My dad was son of a Baptist preacher, one of 9 kids, and got an opportunity to work at Holman Moody, kind of fast forward his career.
And let's just say Holman & Moody was top of the mountain.
We are at Holman Moody today and with John Holman. John, nice of you to join us.
Nice to be with you, bud.
You know, this is one whale of a little hot rod shop you've got here.
World's largest hobby shop.
Is this your hobby?
That's right. And business.
That was the deal back in the day. The Ford factory effort here in Charlotte, North Carolina, they built engines, cars for NASCAR, boat racing, Le Mans. And so at that time they had over 300 employees, and it was a great job because you could work as many hours you want, time and a half. So if you were really hustling, you could make a lot of money, but it's a great education. And when Ford pulled out of racing was the late 60s, and so he had developed a relationship with Junior Johnson, the drivers, Bobby Allison, some of the guys along the way, and Junior asked him to come run his shop at North Wilkesboro.
Yeah.
And I guess my first memories of working around race cars were at Junior's shop. We live right up the street.
Yeah.
And so it's about a mile away. So he'd come home for dinner and then he'd go back to work. So I'd go back to work with him and he'd get a cot. He'd let me sort nuts and bolts and hang out with him, and he'd build motors all night. My first race I remember is my mom took me to North Wilkesboro, and we sat in the concrete bleachers in the very bottom row, and literally beer cans and chicken bones.
Welcome to North Wilkesboro.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. But I just fell in love with it early, and like you said, it's all I've ever known.
Look, I remember going to Holman & Moody's when my dad switched to Ford in '69. And we worked out of a shop, maybe as big as this coffee shop. And you go to Holman & Moody's, and it was like, oh my gosh.
You know, the reason why he got the job at Holman & Moody is because he could do math. And he really just learned. Holman & Moody was a great education. He learned a lot at Junior's. Junior was, what he learned amongst just building engines was how to motivate people.
Yeah.
He'd say at 2 o'clock in the morning, he'd be in there putting a motor together for a race and almost out of gas, you know, running on empty. And Junior would come by and pat him on the back and say, boy, we're gonna go win this race. And he said he would just catch another gear and keep going. But Junior Johnson was an inspiration.
He learned a lot, as you said, at Holman & Moody's. But your dad ends up at Dygard. How did he end up at Dygard?
Well, it's pretty simple. My mom said, if you don't leave, I'm not living in North Wilkesboro my whole life. So I'm leaving. If you want to follow me, you can come. And then as a little kid, I would ride around as I'm growing up in the back of the car, and he would just talk to me because he didn't have anybody else to talk to. He said, we got to get Bobby Allison. We got to get Bobby in the car. If we get Bobby in the car, we'll go win a championship. And I'm just shaking my head. You know, I'm just saying, yeah. And because in our world, you were either a Richard Petty guy or you're a Bobby Allison guy, right? And in some sense, we've kind of lived on the opposite side of that.
Yeah.
But my dad and Bobby were really close. So when he came to drive for him in '82, they went out and won the Daytona 500.
Bobby Allison drove on. He took the checkered flag almost 30 seconds ahead of the pack.
Bumper fell off. My dad swears it was welded on.
It doesn't make any difference, man. It's a win's a win. That's the way it works.
But they built, you know, they were building a program.
Yeah.
And they were winning races, and they were getting ready to win a championship. In 1983, they won a championship with Miller High Life.
Basically from '67, when your dad first starts at Holman & Moody, and here he is '83 with a championship. How big was that?
It was huge. I mean, it was a defining moment with his career.
Yeah.
He raced his whole life and won 2 championships, one in '83 with Bobby and then Dale Jarrett in '99. And he was at the top of his game. It kind of established him, and I think it gave him confidence to go on and do other things in his career and really take those next steps.
It's amazing for me to sometimes to look at this sport. Very few people stay in one place their whole career. Bill Elliott driving for his family, Richard Petty driving for his family. You move around. So your dad was at Dygard, and he ends up with Harry Ranier, with Ranier Lundy. How did that come about, that he left Dygard to go do this?
So my dad recognized early on, if you could build more engines, you could get better at it, right? Somehow the deal came together where the king wanted him to build his engines.
Yes.
In 1984, right?
Not only wanted it, needed it, craved it, had to have it. That's the way it was.
So it was a great, I mean, it's something that means a lot to me. It's really special. It's there for the 200th win at Daytona Beach.
Ronald Reagan looking on alongside Bill Grams Jr.
4th of July, Ronald Reagan.
They are door to door in the dogleg. They touch, coming to the trial, down to the line. It's Richard Petty by a foot. Petty wins his 200th career NASCAR victory.
I have this great picture with my dad, Richard, Bobby, Ronald Reagan eating Kentucky Fried Chicken at Daytona. That was the coolest thing as a kid. I mean, I was like, this is amazing. The car went to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., so that went up there to see that. You know, the whole family went up there to see the car. But one cool thing that probably nobody knows about is after we won the race, or your dad won the race, big deal. I mean, we just stayed in a hotel like anybody else did on the beach, right? Well, Mike Curb came up and he said he gave my dad the room keys to his suite at the big hotel down there, and so we went there and we stayed in the penthouse like that night after the race. It was like we hit the lottery. Yeah. I mean, it was like the craziest thing ever. But that's the one thing I remember as a kid about it. That was a really defining moment, and for my dad. But that caused a fracture. Yeah. You know, that cracked the relationship. And after that, my dad actually took a year off and went and did research on what today is ethanol. Yeah. So he got out of the sport and set up a shop in Greenville, South Carolina, and built engines and did testing for fuel.
That's when I lost your dad during that period. And that's very interesting to me that he walked away really for a while, took another look at it and said, and it draws you back into it.
Kyle, that Daytona 500, I believe it was 1985 Daytona 500. It didn't have a car in the race. Yeah. It was the first time since 1967 at Holman Moody that he didn't have a car. And people always ask me, why are you so passionate about the Daytona 500? Well, I watched my dad sit there and almost crush because he wasn't in that race. Yeah. It made him appreciate it more. Yeah. And so after that summer of 85, Ford Motor Company said, hey, Harry Ranier needs somebody to come run his team. Kel Yarborough's ending his career, and we're looking to carry this thing on. Would you consider that? And at the same time, Rick Hendrick called him. So Rick called him to come, because we had the engine shop, build some engines for Rick. Rick called him and said, hey, would you come work for me? And Ford called him and said, hey, would you do this deal? And it was like a tough deal, right? Yeah. If Rick Hendrick calls you, gotta listen. And Rick's offer was substantially less than the Ford offer. Yeah. But the upside of running the team and building the engines and ultimately getting to select the drivers and things like that it turned out to be the right move. Yeah.
When your dad takes over that team, you have Davey.
When he took over it, we had Cale.
Cale drove it in the beginning.
Yeah. It was a Hardee's car, and they ran a limited schedule.
Right. That's exactly right.
Number 28 Hardee's car.
I forgot that was a Ford.
Everything. Every car was
hand-lettered.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you've been there. Right?
Oh yeah, been there.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Now we wrap everything. Mm-hmm. So, but Cale was driving it, and in his career, and they set Harry and Lauren and everybody said, well, who are we going to put in the car? They said, well, let's put Rusty Wallace in the car. Rusty's up-and-coming guy. He's going to get the job done. And my dad said, and Lauren, and I got to give him credit, he said, Davey Allison's the guy. And because my dad had watched Davey run ARCA races and built some engines for him, and obviously Bobby. And like most sons, they want to do better than their dads. They decided to put Davey in the car instead of Rusty. Yeah. Right?
Which is a huge statement at that time.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. That's a huge statement. Huge gamble, but a huge statement.
Right.
Yeah. You know, we had Tony on another episode, and he talked about how instrumental Lauren was in his career. Mm-hmm. And Harry was in his career to get him and to be recognized. It's funny how that relationship 20 or 30 years later, after they put you guys together. But one thing for me, with your dad and with Davey, there was a magic there. There was from the very, very, very first race, it was like, oh my gosh, where did these guys come from? This is going to be magic.
I mean, my dad just had confidence in him.
Bobby's son Davey will make history this afternoon, the first rookie ever to start this race from the front row.
Davey sat on 5 poles as a rookie and won 2 races, and they didn't run a full schedule. Yeah. But my dad and Davey were like, it was like his second son. Yeah. I mean, they trusted each other. They when you have that relationship, you work harder for that guy. You know how it is.
Yeah.
I mean, certain guys just go that extra effort for you, and that's the way my dad and Davey both thought of each other.
Yeah. That's a moment in time that I was a part of and got to witness, so you knew how special it was. But as we move past some of this stuff, and a shot at the championship in '92 and things like that, moved to '93 and Davey's accident, and then Ernie's accident in '94.
Wait a minute, we're not going to talk about the All-Star race?
We don't need to talk about the damn All-Star race. We don't need to talk about. So this is my interview.
We
not
gotta
yours.
talk
Y'all
about the
kicked our butts.
1992.
Okay, we'll talk about it. What do you want to know?
Classic one hot night.
What do you want? Can you
The
believe
last
that night?
lap.
The last lap.
Well, remember we went and tested there.
Yep.
The
yep.
lighting was kind of crazy, right?
Crazy, yeah.
You can't run Charlotte at night.
No, nobody
What
believed
some
you could
people
run
do.
Charlotte at night. Nobody believed.
So going into the last lap,
What do you want to know?
just replay it for me from New Jersey.
Okay, and I will play it. I've stuck with the same story because this is the way it was.
Kyle Petty is there. He is just a car length back of Earnhardt.
So I come up off turn 2. Davies back there.
yeah.
He's back there. He's a good ways. As we start down the backstretch, and Earnhardt's out next to the wall, and I'm here, the next thing I know, the wall's way over there somewhere, because Earnhardt just keeps coming. And I'm down here somewhere like this. And all of a sudden, turn 3 is way over there also. So we got to get back to turn 3. Well, I'm not checking up, and he's not checking up. So as we go off in the corner, terrible angle. I check up. He goes off in there and spins. I never touched him. I will go to my grave saying I never touched him. And then we come off turn 4, and Davey's there. I mean, he's got a head of steam. Yeah, there's no blocking. So I come to the inside to give him the outside. And I said it that night, and I'll say it again. It's like two runners. When you cross the line, you just like that. And we got together.
They crashed past the finish line.
And when we got together, it was terrible.
Unbelievable. Talk about one hot night.
Listen, I've got a little bit of a conscience, and I felt bad that night. I felt terrible that night.
And I didn't ask you for that.
No, I'm telling you.
No, I mean, that was an awesome time because with you and Robin Pemberton and Felix and all the riding the motorcycle at every track and the video. I mean, you missed the GoPro thing. You could have
that's
done the
exactly.
GoPro.
Yeah.
Right, but it was, I mean, it was a special time because we all hung out together, right?
Everybody did.
I mean, I don't know if you remember after Martinsville, I think you sat on a pole, came over to your house, and we hung out. And
It's funny, we raced,
but
you went to the racetrack to beat each other's brains in, and then you went and everybody got along, and that's the way it was.
my dad always, if he got beat, he would be the first guy to congratulate somebody, right? That's the way it worked.
That's the way
back
it
then.
was.
Those are great times, and I was really young then. I graduated college in 1990. Get out. My first job is to work on plate engines. We went to the Daytona 500 in 1991, sat on a pole. Like, man, I love this Daytona stuff, you know? And then we went and we won the 500 in 92.
Davey Allison victorious.
Yes! We've done it!
But that 92 season was, I mean, it was unreal. I mean, all the stuff, you've seen the video, you know, they have a whole tape on it, but I was upset we didn't win. And I was pretty tough because growing up, my dad was really hard on me. I mean, he was really hard. And I remember you would call your dad King, right?
Yeah.
You never call him Dad.
Yeah, never. Just
I always call my dad Robert.
Yeah.
Right?
Because that's what people in the shop called him.
Right.
Yeah, everybody called my dad at the race shop the King, so I'd say, I got to go talk to the King.
Yeah, I gotta go talk to Robert.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be the owner's kid. I want
That's
to be
right. Exactly.
my own guy.
Your own guy in the shop.
And so, but after that, because success came so fast, it was really, I didn't handle it that great because I was pretty upset about it. I mean, I thought we were going to win the championship. And Davey was so, I mean, he just went on and said, this wasn't meant to be. And we would get him next year.
Yeah.
And then the next year was, you know, obviously the last year of his life when we won our last race at Richmond with him in the spring. And whenever he got out, stopped practice early, got out, started working on the seat, boy, it was
over.
Yeah,
you knew where it was at.
You were in trouble.
There's certain drivers that you watch, like Earnhardt, when he would get out and just walk to the truck and never say anything to anybody, you knew it was over.
Yeah.
It was over. It was going to be a big day tomorrow. And the same thing. But I want to go back to 93. The good part of the sport are the people and the relationships.
Yeah.
The bad part of the sport are things like this.
Davey Allison was in very critical condition late Monday night after the helicopter he was piloting crashed at Talladega Motor Speedway.
Mr. Allison, 32 of Hueytown, Alabama, injured in a private helicopter crash yesterday at Talladega Super Speedway. Died this morning at Caraway Methodist Medical Center.
Even though it didn't happen in a car, you talked about your dad's relationship with Bobby. How hard was that on your dad and on your family, on your mom, on everybody? Because, you know, you don't just leave this sport at the shop when you walk away and lock the door. It's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, it's birthdays, it's everything.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I still get kind of chills thinking about it, to be honest with you. So we'd run Loudon, New Hampshire. We leading the race, had a great race, thinking we were turning our program around. 93 is a bit of a struggle for us coming off of 92. And we fly back in the plane and Davies with us, and man, we're all excited. You know, we got this figured out. You know, we're all fired up. And I was in the shop and in the engine room putting a motor together, and they, you know, my dad comes in and tells me, you know, when people tell you something and you don't believe it, it's like, that's not really happening, right? I mean, there's just no way. And then it started setting in. And then, you know, it's just, what do we do? You know, how do we react? And, you know, so we went to the service, which Davey Allison was a national hero, but in the state of Alabama, in his hometown, it was, trying to say this the right way, but it was like Elvis. You know, people lined the streets. We were all on buses going to the ceremony and the service, and it was just, I mean, they honored him so well. And for a guy like that to make an impact in such a short time, I mean, Dale Jarrett said it at the Hall of Fame deal. He said Davey Allison was Dale Jr. before there was a Dale Jr. And that's really what I think the sport needs. It needs personalities like you guys. And if it wasn't for Davey Allison, there wouldn't be a Robert Yates Racing.
All right, I'll end it here. I've seen hundreds of pictures, it seems like, of your dad in victory lane with different drivers. Seen set on poles, seen photos, seen things, been around him. Never saw a smile like was on his face when they said, you're in the Hall of Fame. How big a moment was that?
Well, we sat there a couple years and waited for his name to be called, but he would always say the voting committee got it right. That guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I raced with them. I did this with that guy. And that was how the story went.
Yeah.
And so every year we kind of had this same thing. So, you know, we're sitting there with anticipation. You never know. You know, you don't know what's going to happen. You get some thumbs up on the way in. You're feeling better about it. But that moment was, his life was about NASCAR racing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was a Christian guy. He wanted to make sure everybody knew that. He wanted to use NASCAR as his platform to give back and make his mom and dad proud. And that moment for him to be in the Hall of Fame was one of the greatest things ever. And he knew his time was short. I mean, it was getting down to where it was going to be really tough. And what we would always talk about, I said, Dad, I don't want to give your speech. You know, I need you to be there to give your speech. And that's kind of how I kept him excited about it. But I tell you what, he would have thought that the only thing better than him giving his speech is Dale Jarrett giving him his speech and him being able to be there for it. But it was an amazing moment. And you know, I got a chance to take his jacket to him, so he saw his jacket. And but it made his life complete.
Thank you, man. Thanks for coming today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey Motorsports fans, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit subscribe before you go for all the latest news and highlights across motorsports.